This is definitely going to be one of those kind of really Bethesda, really Fallout 76. We're going to go over some of the recent decisions or things that have come out around Fallout 76, and it just kind of leaves you scratching your head or wondering how on earth this happened. Although hopefully I could provide some context as to perhaps how exactly it did happen. Even further, we're going to go over a bit as to what's on the horizon for this game. Some new data mines are found from a new public test server update, and even further, we are likely getting some major details as to when exactly we'll find out more major details in just a few days to a week. If you guys enjoy the content, you can get subscribed. We are on the cusp of actually a lot for this game, as we're likely getting a trailer and some new information around QuakeCon, which is just a few weeks away, and even some new in-game content. But with that, let's first take a look at Fallout 76's recent ban wave. And just a brief recap if you didn't catch some of the earlier videos on this topic, more or less there was a dupe in Fallout 76 where you could go to a vendor, trade an item to that vendor, and then using the social menu, server hop away and the item would remain there, but you would also have the item, so you could duplicate items via this. It was very expensive in that you had to buy all of your items back with caps, and if you wanted to do this on a large scale, that did get very pricey. But even before Bethesda patched this out, which it has now been patched out, they began issuing suspensions pending investigation to accounts that were caught doing this. And although that was a solution, and certainly does seem like a good solution, this definitely wasn't perfect, as a lot of people were doing it on one main burner account and then trading those duped items away before the accounts got banned. So it's not like this was totally protecting the economy, and this ended up being a fairly large suspension / ban wave. It seems like thousands of accounts were banned, and it was one of the largest ban waves the game has ever had. But as I mentioned before, that initial wave was just kind of a suspension pending investigation, and Bethesda came out later to say that certain accounts that were particularly egregious in their abuse of this exploit would be permabanned or just banned forever, while other ones would be getting a temporary suspension and unbanned at a later time. And over the past week, we started to see those emails go out, with some users that abused this exploit a couple of weeks ago now getting unbanned and able to return to the game. You may recall in one of the past videos, we talked about this email that went out seemingly around this. It was an unsuspension email where a user basically had their account level reset and the duped items deleted, but then were able to return to Fallout 76. I'm not sure if that ended up being a fake email, because now the ones that are going out in mass are very different, or if it was just some weird niche case where that happened to just that particular person and really hasn't been verified anywhere else thus far. But these brand new unsuspension emails, what we find is, following a thorough investigation, this account is being placed on a final warning due to violating the terms of service and code of conduct. We cannot allow item duplication as is in direct violation of the following sections of the code of conduct, then that section of the code of conduct. At this time, we have now reactivated your Bethesda.net account and you may now log back in. Further violations of any part of our terms of service may result in a temporary suspension or even a permanent deactivation of your account. And then it just says to actually review the TOS and code of conduct. So already you might see some red flags around this, but what was later found was, as these dupers were unbanned and allowed back into the game, they didn't actually have their duped items removed. And thus far, I have yet to see a single instance of somebody now getting unsuspended, able to return to the game, and having anything changed around their account. It's basically left exactly the same as it was before they were suspended. And before you say, well, of course, Bethesda was just banning the most egregious duper, so these guys probably barely duped anything and they didn't see a point in deleting those items. Except in light of this, many have taken to kind of brag about how they've been unbanned in some of the duper discords or Facebook groups, where some users report duping over 80 of a certain legacy item, like a legacy weapon, and still having all 80 of those duplicates. Some users duping on multiple different accounts and having all of them restored with their full items intact. And just in general, it does not seem like this was an irrelevant amount of duping. There was still some pretty heavy duping going on with these accounts that are now allowed back in the game with all of those duped items. And even further, going back to that original email itself, one aspect of it that I just found odd, even though Bethesda in the beginning describes this as a final warning, they don't really seem to stick to that, as later on they do mention that further violations may result in a temporary suspension or even a permanent deactivation. So even though you were caught in this ban wave, unbanned, and given a final warning, you still may get a temporary suspension for violating future code of conduct or terms of service things. Shouldn't this be a situation where it's a final warning? If you break any further rules, you will get a permaban? Overall, this is just baffling to me. And I can't think of a valid reason that Bethesda didn't actually delete all of those items except laziness. Because in the past, Bethesda has gone into people's accounts and deleted duped items. Specifically in one wave, they went on people's accounts that had rare items that were perceived to be duped and deleted all of the duplicates. So let's say you had 80 plus duped legacy items, you would log back on to find, oh no, now I only have one. Did that tool just vanish, or did they just decide for some reason, nope, it's no longer a big deal, we'll just harm the economy, whatever. To me, this is just crazy. Obviously, this will cause permanent damage to the economy, and really just overall, talk about kind of a slap on the wrist. If you abuse this dupe exploit, although yes, some people did get permanently banned, a good chunk of people were able to just dupe a bunch of stuff, now have a lot more items, and were just kind of banned for a week and a half, 2 weeks or so. It's a relatively low punishment for the hours of grinding it would have taken to get those items legitimately. And one thing that I would like to add to this, based off my knowledge thus far of Bethesda and how Fallout 76 is handled, I would suspect this is a core problem with Bethesda support specifically, which is a separate branch of Bethesda. So though the developers and even potentially at times the community team do things that many users don't agree with, or give responses that many users don't agree with, I would suspect this was large in part a decision by Bethesda support, which has time and time again just shown to be just bad. I mean, I could sugarcoat it or try and put it in a different way, but they've made so many questionable, mind-boggling decisions, and this is just another one you could add to that pile. So before you go start flaming some of the devs or even community managers on Reddit, Twitter, I don't even think they're the people that deserve blame here. And in past instances, there have been times where one part of Bethesda was pushing for something to happen via Bethesda support, but then Bethesda support just did something totally different and questionable. But okay, something else that may fall back onto developers of this game, or is a different issue that recently popped up, are some more ghillie suit problems. A bunch of new ghillie suits were added to Fallout 76 via the season system, and of course they look cool. Who doesn't want a ghillie suit on their armor? And as you progress through the season, you'll unlock different ghillie suit skins for different armors. And roughly for every 10 levels or so, you will have a different option. So for wood armor, scout armor, marine armor, secret service armor, etc. We found early on with the wood armor one, if you crouched, it would just float. Part of the ghillie suit was not attached to the other part, and it would just kind of hang out above you there. But now, as people are getting to the latter part of this season, and actually some of the particularly high levels, you could find on the secret service ghillie suit, it actually obstructs your view in first person if you're holding a weapon. Which I don't know, I feel like this is somehow far worse and actually a lot funnier. It is kind of immersive in a way. I mean, if you were really wearing a ghillie suit, or if it did look like this, it definitely could happen this way. In the past one, you could almost forgive them in some sense, but in this one, you literally didn't play the game with this equipped to a character, right? Like, there's no other explanation for something like this getting through. There's a popular Reddit post around this. Bethesda did respond to it, so hopefully it ends up getting fixed. But honestly, at this point, just kind of a funny one. I don't have much else to say on that. Another exploit that has popped up as of late is actually mass placing ammo machines at camps. At one particular workshop in Fallout 76, you are able to claim it and actually produce ammo. It is one of the unique characteristics of that workshop and the only spot you could do it. Although it seems like using a recent exploit, users are actually able to place down several of this exact ammo creation machine at their camps. And I've seen several reports over the past couple of weeks of people finding these. And well, yeah, that's kind of it. It exists. It's another exploit with Fallout 76. But fortunately, that is the end of the negative. And now we could look ahead to a more positive future with Fallout 76. Just recently, there was an update to the public test server. There wasn't a ton to infer or data mine from this. There weren't even any patch notes. One of the big things we can find are quite a few additional storefronts. If you keep up to date with my videos, several of these items you may have seen from the files. The difference being, these are actually the storefronts, so what will eventually be represented on the Atomic Shop. And when the storefronts go live, that typically indicates that it's closer to release compared to something like this, where you could just find the object in the files. Once the pictures are taken, we're definitely closer. At least that's a general rule of thumb. There's a lot of cool stuff you could find, a lot of stuff, again, I've shown in past videos, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'll have a full link to the album down below if you want to check out this for yourself. Something else that you could find among these that's just interesting about it is actually quite a few items that were originally planned for the score system seem to be getting repurposed for the Atomic Shop. It's almost like Bethesda created too much content for Score, and in turn, some of it is just kind of falling into a different category now. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just an interesting observation we could see from the data mines. One thing that has had a lot of speculation around it or behind it was what is going on with the future seasons to Fallout 76. Season 1, of course, is a space theme, and as such, you could find a lot of space-themed cosmetics, in particular in that final bundle. But what's going to be Season 2 or even Season 3? And it seems like we may have had this confirmed already. During one of the podcasts, in particular the very infamous IGN podcast with Bethesda, they did say this.
We're targeting seasons every quarter. They're going to change the theme and the nature of the board game you're playing based on other content that's coming, stuff like that. So ones down the road will be more Brotherhood of Steam themed and such.
Which does seem to confirm that the next season, or at least one of the next 2 seasons, will actually be Brotherhood themed. Getting a ton of Brotherhood cosmetics should be awesome. I think a lot of people are going to be very, very happy about that. Although speaking of the Brotherhood of Steel and future of this game, I actually did a recent podcast on the Fallout Lorecast where I talk more in depth about Brotherhood Datamines and just the future of the game overall. So if you want to check that out, I will have links to their social media down below. And then lastly, I do suspect we're going to see some new information or details around the future of Fallout 76 very soon. QuakeCon is going to be the latter half of next week, and it seems like a week beforehand would be a good time to drop that schedule. The schedule will likely give us a pretty good insight if we'll actually have a Q&A panel like we've seen in past years for the game. We know next to nothing about this upcoming Brotherhood of Steel DLC, or even more specifically the Fortifying Atlas event, which is set to begin also late next week. We have rough ideas from data mines, but Bethesda themselves haven't really officially confirmed what the difference between the Alpha and Bravo side will be, so I'd expect something like that coming in perhaps this week's Inside the Vault, or even just at QuakeCon with the schedule going live perhaps at some point this week. I really expect we'll see a large-scale kind of second half of 2020 trailer for Fallout 76, and it'll probably reveal what the main premise of the Brotherhood quest is. I also do wonder if we'll see aliens in that trailer, because we have this Guidestone speculation and data mines around it, and I think it's going to lead somewhere. I don't think that's just something that'll sit there in the background. But either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. Hopefully you guys got filled in with Fallout 76 news, some of the more questionable things, but also a look ahead at the future and how perhaps we'll be getting some new stuff very soon. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, but until next time, I hope to see you all later.